Welcome to Coffee and Closers. I'm Nikolai Bedore, and I want to personally invite you to join me and one of today's top performing sales stars for a cup of coffee and authentic conversation. And our collective goal is that you will walk away with tangible knowledge that you can apply to your sales efforts today. Are you ready? Grab a cup, fill it up, and let's get into another episode of Coffee and Closers.
Thanks for joining us. So just a little bit about this. First of all, the reason why we do this is because we feel like there was a shortage of genuine and authentic sales knowledge in the community for salespeople and non-salespeople alike. So that's why we built this. How this goes is I'm going to ask 5 questions to our guest. And the reason we do that is because we record this on a podcast and a vlog so you guys can watch that afterwards. And then after that, we open a Q&A. And there are no stupid questions. Anything about leadership, marketing, sales, feel free to ask it. You've got one of the brightest sales minds in the country before you. But before we do that, I want to thank some people. First, our friends at WeWork. Thanks for having us back. You guys do such great work. Thank you so much. Yeah. And speaking of work, I don't know how anybody works without being caffeinated. So thanks to Matt and the Driven Coffee Roaster team over there. If you guys haven't grabbed a cup, go do it. They'll be there for the networking session. Thanks again, guys. If you are with us right now and not here physically, that is not magic. That is Eric. That is Jensen Studios back there. Thank you, Eric and team, for putting this stuff together. If you're listening to this via the blog or the vlog right now, and you heard a song that probably made you want to jump out of your seat and do a little boogie, well, that's our friend Alex Rossi. If you guys don't know Alex Rossi, look him up. He's a living local legend. He's fantastic. And last but not least, my name is Nikolai Bedore. So I'm the creator and host of Coffee and Closers. When I'm not here, I'm running a revenue growth agency. We do a few different things. One is we build high-performance sales plans. We design brands that sell your story to your target market. And we also build teams and do education workshops around those teams to make sure that sales folks are clipping at a high velocity. And with that, with what we do, we get a chance to meet and befriend some of the top-performing salespeople in the country. And Liz is no exception to that. So what's cool about Liz is back in the day, we were all at Oracle. How many other Oracle folks do we have here? Yeah. When we
Everyone
were there,
raises their hand like.
Oracle taught a lot of us a lot of things, and for Liz, it taught her that though she's an absolute behemoth sales star, she found her passion for leadership at an early age, and she cut her teeth there. At the top of her game, she decided to say, you know what, I could keep climbing, or I'm going to go to Digital River. You guys ever heard of a little startup called Digital River? She helped grow Digital River to what they were when she left to take a new challenge over at Field Nation. And since then, she's grown revenue at Field Nation, startup darling, them, and another startup darling you may have heard of called Jamf. We've got a chance to work with her. I've seen her in action a couple different times, and she's amazing. Put your hands together for Liz Benz. Well, thanks for coming.
Do we have to sit?
You want to? We can sit. We can stand.
No,
we can
let's
float.
sit.
All right.
I like standing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. It's really fun. I think you talked me up a little bit more than I probably can give myself credit for, but thank you. I appreciate it.
I adore you. You know that. So fill in the blanks. What did I miss?
Yeah. So I grew up in North Carolina. I put myself through school. I went to NC State. I had a series of outside sales roles before I started at Oracle. Some really fun ones. My first sales job was selling cell phones in a mall, like in a kiosk. And I do this because I walked around in a circle when I was bored. Learned everything about sales, selling cell phones, and customer service. I swear there's a lot to be learned about working in retail. And then I had some outside sales jobs, and I came to Oracle. I was a BDC, which is common word for an SDR. And had a blast. I was in higher education, learned a lot. I was at Oracle for 5 years and had 4 different roles at Oracle. And when I left, it was time for me to go. It was time for me to move on. And I had this goal to get on the business side of sales. So I led sales reps and BDCs, and I was a BDC at Oracle. And then I went over and started an inside sales team at Digital River. And same equivalent as a BDC, a market development team, and then I took over global sales operations, which was my real goal. My real goal was to understand the backside of sales, so compensation, org structure, change management, all of those things, and I had a blast. That was a really, really fun job. Global role, was able to take on a couple different things and had some really fun projects while I was there. And then the opportunity to go to Field Nation presented itself, and I went over there and led sales for a couple of years. It was fun.
Yeah, you did.
And then, and that's where Mikla and I actually met. We didn't actually meet at Oracle. He called me, he actually harassed me and said, hey, do you need help recruiting? And I said, no, I think we're fine. And then he was like, well, actually, I think we know about 100 of the same people. And I was like, okay, let's chat. And so he very, very pleasantly persistent. And so we had an opportunity, Mikla and I had an opportunity. We didn't actually connect at Oracle, but I had an opportunity to work at Field Nation together. Field Nation was an incredible opportunity. Startup, they've been around for about 10 years. They are a marketplace for independent contractors. So a very different type of sell. You're selling more of what a service could be rather than selling like a piece of software or something like that. So it's very different. And then I was lucky enough to be to have Jamf kind of present an opportunity there, and now I lead the inside sales team at Jamf for Americas, and we also have the what we call the inside sales specialists, and they are the equivalent of the SDR role, sales development role, and it's just a whole hell of a lot of fun. It's awesome.
I was just joking with some of your teammates. I said, I feel like they must shoot glitter in the HVAC system or something because everyone just keeps smiling. Everybody that I meet just...
Yeah, I tell you what, Jamf is an incredible place to work. It's I would say that the leadership team is second to none. They really understand our business and they understand where we're going and they work really well together. Sometimes you work at companies where the leadership team isn't cohesive, and Jamf has a team that really works together. Our product is amazing, right? So word to the wise, when you're selling, sell a product that's top of the market, right? It makes a huge difference in your selling efforts. I would say that for me, there's a couple things that I think Jamf is really good at. One, I think that they are very good at supporting their employees in a lot of different directions. And then also I think they are very conscious about making sure that we don't lose focus on what it is, and that's to help people succeed with Apple.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I think that everyone makes it's fun. It's a good culture. Very good at working on diversity and inclusion and all those things that are really important to me. And so we just actually had our Jamf report, which is our business weekly business review at the whole company, and it was talking about what we're doing in terms of like the foundation and donations and things like that. So it's a really well-rounded place to be. It's
That's
awesome.
So already 2 nuggets: sell something that you love or a pain that you're passionate about solving. Number 2, harassment, or like I like to call persistence works. It scored me my wife, so it obviously scored some business. So everyone write that one down. I'm kidding.
Well, he did harass me, but then I harassed him. We just went through a big growth spurt at Jamf, and Mikla was the first person I called because we needed to get some really good sales rock stars, and some of them are in this room right now. And so Mikla helped us build our team and our growing team at Jamf. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So no question, you've had a lot of success in your life. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't. I loved your goals, your global sales director kind of thing. That's what you wanted to get. So let's talk about failures, because has anyone here ever failed? All right, Josh, we know that's you. We'll just assume. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, everyone has. So let's focus on that, because I think the mission of this is to teach and kind of hopefully share some tangible nuggets that people can walk away with from the sales and marketing standpoint. But everyone talks about how great they are. But let's talk about the time that you try. There was a challenge before you bombed, and what you learned from it.
Oh my gosh, I've bombed so many times. I think I bomb every day. So, well, there's one that comes to mind that's probably just a life lesson. There's 2. One is kind of funny, and one is more business-like. The first one is that little button that says reply all or reply? Don't use reply all. So I was a BDC at Oracle, and I know there's a few people in this room that probably remember this, because I went through like new hire boot camp with this individual, and he decided to go to Salesforce. Salesforce is obviously a huge competitor to Oracle. And he wrote this really nice note about how he had a great time at Oracle, and he copied. I think Larry Ellison was on that email. Like everyone was on that email, and I replied all instead of hitting reply and said, give them hell at Salesforce. And it was like one of those, as soon as I hit send, I ran right into my boss's office and I was like, I think I just had career suicide. I'm not sure what happened. So I had to write an apology letter and a whole bit, but anyway, don't hit reply all. That was probably that still sticks out. Like it's still a problem in my head. But I would say that the biggest failure that I've had a couple. So one, I think one of the biggest failures I've had is staying in a role too long when you're really unhappy. I've had a really good fortune and have been very, very lucky to have the career track that I've had. But I've stayed in roles too long and have made myself unhappy. And you know, I had some good career track records and was in a role where I was being promoted. But I was really unhappy in what I was doing. And I was unhappy because I didn't feel like I was succeeding, right? The company felt like I was succeeding, but I didn't feel like I was succeeding. And I stayed there too long. And so it was a challenge in my personal life and professional life, in that my husband had to say, hey, I'd like to have my wife back, and you know, where's your personality and all those kinds of things. So I think that was probably the biggest failure. And then the other thing I would say is that I had a huge deal that was forecasted to close. It was going to make my quarter, my boss's quarter, my boss's boss's quarter. It's coming in, no problem. We didn't know the buying process, and we lost the deal. And it lost the quarter for myself. When I say loss, meaning I didn't hit my number, I feel like that's a loss. And so that was really hard. So learning the buying process and the sales cycle is helpful.
Yeah. When would you identify that? Because has anyone, I've lost 1,000 deals that way.
Yeah.
Just assuming. I know it's the worst possible thing ever in sales. Like from that experience,
Yeah.
You did it once, right? Was it like, okay, I learned that.
Oh, I've done it a couple times, but that was like the one that I remember the most. So I think in the buying process, ask the hard questions early, right? If there are challenges and risks, get them out on the table early, because that will help you to know when to walk away from a deal, right? So you can tell pretty quickly if you're talking to a customer, and you can figure out pretty quickly if they're kicking tires, right, and they're not really wanting to buy, just by asking a few simple questions like, hey, are you looking at other competitors? Who have you used in the past? What did you like about them? And very quickly you'll find out like, oh yeah, I love Jamf, or I love Salesforce, or whatever it might be, and they'll tell you why. The other thing is knowing who is a part of the influence to buy that, because I could go and say, hey, I would like to buy some software, and if my boss, John Stroessel, said, I really hate that company, or I really don't, we've had a bad implementation, or whatever, that can stop a deal in its tracks, right? So just making sure you understand who all the influences are in the sales cycle is huge, I think.
Absolutely. So maybe you have, all the success. I would love to hear a little bit more about transfer of knowledge from failing to success, because you've had a lot of it. Do you have a couple, maybe how about this? Maybe some challenges that you faced that you overcame, and what the achievement was, and why you feel it was achievement? It doesn't need to impress us, just why it really stuck out as an achievement for you.
Yeah, I think, so another challenge, because there are always challenges at work, I think that recently we had, we're working through what I would call some tough goals, right? And understanding, some sales goals and how we achieve those goals. And there was some challenges around making sure that we, as a sales team, stayed engaged and stayed heads down and those kinds of things. And I think we had a challenge in the goals that we set, right? And that falls on me as a sales leader. And so I think that the turnaround and the fun part is that I'm lucky to have some really good leaders that work for me, that lead our sales teams and keep them engaged. And the lesson learned there was keep your heads down, make sure that you're doing all the right things. And lo and behold, this year we're having some really good success, right? And I don't think it has anything to do with us changing a whole bunch, right? Like, yes, do we feel like we're getting better at selling? Obviously, we're always evolving. But I think a lot of it has to do with just hard work and a positive attitude, right? And so keeping that keeping that focus has really we've seen a lot of success this year. It's been fun.
All right. So I should probably ask this, how many people here want to learn about sales leadership? And how many people want to learn about closing down more fat deals?
It's about 50-50.
All right. Do you mind if I ask
Go for
a little
it.
bit more?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hands about closing big fat deals.
Yeah.
And let's just rap a little bit, because I think
Yeah.
that's both of our mutual favorite things to do.
Totally. So I had this deal at Field Nation, and it was a fun one because when I started there, I said we're going to go close that deal. They had left us. I was determined to go get them back. I was pleasantly persistent with several different decision makers at the company. I worked in tandem with a partner of mine, and at Field Nation, it was definitely like a player coach role. So I was definitely selling as well as leading sales teams. And we get this guy, he finally agrees to a meeting. We walk into the meeting, we fly down. He said, I'll meet with you tomorrow. We fly down from here to the southeast. And I said, he said, okay, well, what do you got? And we both looked at each other and we just said, we want to help you. We feel like you're in a bad spot with who you're working with.
So so you flew in there. This person had no idea. Basically, like, all right, show me your dog and pony show.
He was giving us 15 minutes, and we flew to see him. Yeah, it was pretty fun. And so he gave us 15 minutes. We ended up staying for 2 hours. And the best part about this deal was not about selling on features and functions. And at Field Nation, we don't sell on features and functions. It's all about the service that we provided. And at the end of the session, we were whiteboarding out solutions for his problems that really had nothing to do with Field Nation, right? It had everything to do with the problems that he was trying to solve in the business at that moment. We weaved our way in there, obviously, but that was like the beginning of, I think, a courtship for 8 months, right? To figure out how to get them to come back to us. And so when we went back and forth, and of course our competition was in there hot and heavy, and that what we just kept going back to was making sure that it was not about Field Nation. It was all about the customer, and we really felt that way at Field Nation. And the same thing at Jamf. It's kind of a trend that I'm finding at the companies that I've ended up with, is just really focusing on the customer. We ended up closing one of the biggest deals that Field Nation had ever had, and it was more around, again, solving his problems than anything else that we were offering.
Right on. So can you talk about process? Because you've talked about closing these deals now a lot. And I'm going to ask you twofold, because we've got two different audiences here. One on maybe that deal or the like, and then also on leadership, just to prep your mind. But I'd love to hear kind of your process, because it sounds like the 8-month courtship or whatever.
So sales is, I believe, and this is the only thing that I think has made me successful, is hard work and just consistent follow-up, right? I mean, you just have to follow up consistently, not harassment, but
break that down, not harassment.
But it's all about the follow-up and staying relevant, adding value to the process and to who you're selling to every time you chat.
When you say relevance and value, I mean, let's say 8 months. I mean, to get a hold of somebody, I mean, I bugged you for how long? You know, I know that there's been some 8-month courtships. And by courtship, I mean me, like the stocky out the window kind of courtships, where this person isn't ready to do business with me, but I'd like to do business with them. Could you share some of those relevant tricks? Like, is it links? Is it story? How do you stay, in front of someone?
I think obviously do your research on who you're talking to, know your audience, know what they care about. That's probably number one. I think my style is to, every time I chat with them, or I can get them on the phone or send them an email, it's all about talking to your friend. I'm not saying like talk about how drunk you got last weekend or anything like that, but more around, hey, pretend like they're your best friend and pretend like they're one of your best friends, right? And everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, and so just having that, being very real about what you're talking about and what you're trying to accomplish. I'd also say that if you start down a business track and you're always trying to sell with them, you're going to become irrelevant very quickly, because no one really wants to be sold to. People know what they want to buy before they're talking to you these days, right? So no one really wants to be sold to. So I would say make sure that you keep it your own. And if you're new to sales, it's more around, don't have your spiel. Think about what you're going to talk about. Like Mikkel and I are talking about right now. It's if I had a spiel, I'd have note cards, and you would be like, oh, okay, beat it, right? So anyway, I think that's from a sales process perspective, from a rep perspective, it's all about persistence, follow-up, and just making sure that you're making it your own when you're chatting with them. From a sales leadership perspective, I think that there's a couple fun things that are really important. One, I really believe in career development, right? So making sure that you have a process around career development for your teams, because everyone wants to move up, right? Everyone wants to do something different, whether you want to just be better at the role that you're doing, or you want to get into your next role. I think it's all about making sure you have some sort of career track. Recognition is big, and there's all sorts of different types of recognition. And then there's the good old-fashioned log your activities, right? Let's make sure we know what you're doing, and it's not fun, but it's something that's necessary.
Well, we were just talking about metrics the other day with a client to say metrics are people look at metrics as the voodoo monster, but really metrics are how you celebrate a good or bad day.
Right.
How do you give someone an award if you have no metric to base it upon?
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes metrics become a thing that sales guys like myself, I know I'm going to hit club if I do this.
Right.
Without that, sometimes, I don't know if this speaks to anyone, but sometimes your efforts seem fleeting because you've got nothing. I can't tell you how hard I worked for a piece of Oracle plastic. All those awards, honest to God, I worked so hard for a piece of plastic, but because it made me feel gooey inside. And sometimes great salespeople, it's not even about the money. It's just about respect and being appreciated.
I think metrics are, they do sound like a bad word. They sound like a 4-letter word, and they're not. It's one of those things that you always want to make sure that you're giving the right metrics or the right guidelines to the sales teams to be successful. I don't believe in metrics just for metrics' sake, just to make sure that you're busy. I don't believe in meetings to make sure that you're busy. I believe in hopefully giving the right guidance to the reps to be successful, because at the end of the day, I could go and say everyone has to make 100 dials each day or whatever it might be. But that's not gonna, if we give metrics like that, that's all they're gonna do is skirt around it, right?
Right.
So, and I've been there, right? I've done that, I've been there. And so hopefully, with the guidance of our leadership team and data science and a few other things, that we can get really prescriptive on what works. And we're still figuring it out at Jamf, for sure. We're still figuring it out, but it's, and then you also don't want to give metrics where people just like hate to come to work, because that couldn't be like the worst thing. I remember at Oracle, we had those dial metrics, and people used to, I remember this, and this is why I really have a hard time giving like really hardcore call metrics, is people would call the weather line, and they would say, were you one of those people?
Yes, I was. It's funny that you're saying this.
They would call the weather line when they didn't get enough phone calls, and some of them were really good reps, right? And it was more around, hey, well, I made 10 really good calls and I got 10 meetings, right? Great, that's exactly what I want. And then you called the other 90 calls, it was calling the weather line, right? And it was like, the weather today is sunny. And then you'd hang up and say, the weather today is sunny. And you did that about 20 times. So my point is that like metrics they can like backfire on you big time, right? And so I think we try to have a balance of a little bit of fun, a little bit of accountability, a little bit of recognition, and just a little bit of direction in terms of metrics.
I've never understood activity metrics. To me, it's progress metrics, right?
Right.
What are you doing today differently than you did yesterday that makes you a better rep? So that's why, yes, I was one of those people that used to call the weather line, because I had 10 accounts, so we went to call 30 times a day.
Yeah.
How about interview questions, really quick? I know I'm kind of bogarting this, and I apologize, but I'm just such a fan. So interview questions that your go-to, because everyone that has ever interviewed is like, oh, I just adore Liz. I mean, there's probably some people looking to build a team out. How do you ask the right questions to make sure you know?
So the first thing that I do is I sit down and I ask them what questions do they have for me. A really good guideline of whether they're prepared, whether they're very interested, and I've heard it can be intimidating. That's not the goal, but it's really to understand, what are they there for, right? So sometimes you get the question of what are the benefits like, and sometimes you get the question of where's Jamf going, and why are you growing your sales team, and what are the opportunities, and which market? I mean, sometimes you get some really brilliant questions that I have never even thought of. So that's my first one. And then Ryan Olson, I share this one too. It's would you rather, do you hate to lose? How does it go now? No, I missed it. Do you love to win or hate to lose? And I missed it in my head, but I always ask that. Do you love to win or hate to lose? I hate to lose. There's no wrong answer there. But I hate to lose because that means you're competing, right? And you've competed. You can win and not really you really haven't been competing. But those are a couple of the good ones. But I think the one that sticks out in my mind is, what questions do you have for me right when you sit down?
It just throws them right off guard because I'm sure in their head
And
they've got their script and they're like,
yeah, and that's not the intention, certainly, at all. The intention is, and typically when I'm involved in interviewing sales candidates, I'm one of the last people to interview them. And really the intention is, you've probably been drilled with a bunch of questions. What can I answer for you? But it certainly helps kind of bring out the best in people.
Well, also, the best reps in the world, that's all they do is ask questions.
Right.
In fact, a lot of the best reps I've ever met are some of the quietest people when they're in the theater. When they're in the sales theater, they might be a different person outside, but when they're in that moment, that's all they're doing is asking questions. Because how are you going to know if you're going to bring value?
Right.
If you just, you have no idea if they have a pain or not.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So I got one more, and then it's all you guys. Any books or podcasts or videos or trainings or anything that you can share with these people that made you who you are, that maybe they can go check out and apply that to their sales bag?
Yeah, I'm not a big self-help book type of person, but Driven is one of my favorites. I just think it's an amazing book in terms of, thinking about how to get to where you want to go. There is a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. If you haven't read it, read it. It's a great sales book. It's actually intended for marketing, but it's all about influencing. Obviously, it's the name of the book. And then there's a new book, but I can't really say the title because there's a 4-letter word in there, but it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You-Know-What. It is a personal book that it's not about being compliant or complacent. It's all about prioritizing what you're doing in life to making sure that you're focusing on the right things. So it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep, and you can look it up. But it really helped me. I have 2 kids, really busy home life, a husband that works, so dual income. We just recently remodeled a house, and just a lot going on, and trying to figure out what's important. I think I wake up every morning figuring out that I have to do 4,000 things, and so I'm really trying to figure out what are the top 3 things that I have to do that day to be, to make that a good day. And so that book helped me a lot, actually. That's good.
Awesome. Well, any final words of wisdom?
I would say that so sales I think is a really interesting profession. It is. It certainly isn't easy. A lot of people think it's easy, and everyone says, I want to be in sales, and then you say, okay, well, why don't you carry a quota and then see how you feel about that. Yeah. I would say that to be successful in sales, it's all about hard work. It's the hustle factor, really, and making sure that you're having fun while doing it. It sounds cliche, but and then in sales leadership is the home run for me is seeing somebody move on to their next role or get better or improve. That is a home run. So focus on those things.
You're awesome. Put your hands together, guys, for Liz.
Thanks.
All right, so what do we think? What'd you learn? Well, if you like that, check out coffeeclosers.com for upcoming episodes, recordings, and more. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. Each one has been hand-selected. They are best in class. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Coffee and Closers. Cheers.
Say live, come on live a life we love. Gotta live, I said live a life we love.